So good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is John Bombardier. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I want to welcome everyone here to our Strategic Planning Committee training. This will be an informal and brief training to introduce you to the process of basically creating and updating the state of the schools and the state of the community plans that were developed as part of our last strategic planning process. Since we're a small group, I thought we could just take a moment and go around and just quickly introduce ourselves and what role you play in either in the school or the school community, just because there are a small number of us. And then I will turn it over to Kathy Weinkoff. Kathy Weinkoff is with the New Jersey School Boards Association, and she is our field representative. And Kathy is spearheading the process for strategic planning across many districts, but also supported us in our first round of strategic planning. Will be supporting us as we go in the second round. All right, so welcome everyone and thank you. So the purpose of tonight is to provide an overview of the state of the school and the state of the community reports. So to kick us off, Kathy's going to do a quick review of the process as a whole, and then we're going to go right into the state of the community and state of the school reports. And I know from the sign-ups, each of you has either signed up to be part of either State of the Schools, which you're going to get information about, or State of the Community, or you signed up and stated, I'm fine with either committee, and we placed you tentatively within a committee based on numbers. We did have a lot more for State of the Schools, but we're flexible and we want to make sure that the committee that you're on, you're comfortable with, and we want to have representation on each committee across the district. So we'll go right in.
Okay, so as John said, I am Kathy Weinkoff, and I work with New Jersey School Boards Association. I've been with the association for 14 years, and I have worked with the Aberdeen Regional Board of Education for all of those 14 years. Generally, I come in and do training with the board, but we do annual goal setting, which is derived from the last strategic plan that was done in the district. So when Dr. Micah came into district and transitioned in, they did their initial strategic plan back in 2016. And the purpose of a strategic plan is to really create an organizational-wide mission and vision as to where the stakeholders in the community would like to see the educational process within the school district to go. And so everything that the district will do once a strategic plan has been established is carry out those goals and then make sure that the mission statement that we developed back in the previous strategic plan, all of the work that we do in a school district really should support that mission statement that we've developed, as well as we created belief statements. And so that is where our work gets driven. When the Board of Education makes decisions at the board table, they need to make sure that those decisions really do move that mission statement and support the mission statement. So
as a result, this is from the last strategic planning in 2016, this was the vision and mission statement that was developed as part of that process. So we had a mission statement at that point, not a vision statement, and this was the vision and mission statement that was developed in 2016.
And we'll review that now that we're doing a renewal of the strategic plan. And we will reaffirm that mission statement, and we will also look and reaffirm our belief statements. So then what happens as we move forward in the strategic planning process, it really does take and look at where we are now at this point in time when we do our planning session. Then we'll go through some activities and exercises during the weekend planning session to determine where we want to be. And then after we have the planning session, we'll convene groups to write action plans that are going to take our work from our planning session, and that will take us to how we're going to get there. So the action plans really lay out how we're going to carry out the actions that we end up with during our planning weekend. And, you know, we talk all the time about advantages of strategic planning. It really does allow for us to be innovative in the process, to think outside the box and come up with programs and or solutions to things that we might not normally use within a school district. It's a great communication tool for the Board of Education and the district, because what will happen is there will be reporting out on the progress towards the completion of that strategic plan. The Board of Education is pretty much turning over the planning process to the stakeholders, and it is the only time that the board does invite the stakeholders in to help plan for long-range actions for the school district. Any other time, when I come in and meet with the board over the summer, they establish annual goals. Those annual goals are what the Board of Education evaluates the superintendent on. So he will take actions and goals from the strategic plan, and those get implemented throughout the year as his annual goals, and then the board will evaluate him. And it does also really look at the limited resources that the district has and how we're best going to utilize the limited resources that we have. And so oftentimes districts, you know, if you can't have these issues, is your school enrollment changing? Which, talking to now Dr. Bombardier, we had a conversation about the preschool and how that's expanding. So that says to me that your enrollment here in your district is changing. Many years ago, I will tell you, I have two boys that actually attended St. John Vianney High School over here. So I spent a lot of time driving from Millstone Township over to St. John Vianney, and I will tell you, driving down 34 looks very different now than what it did all of those years ago whenever my boys were in school here. So there's a lot of things happening here within your community. You know, and are your families changing? You know, I know in my community what's happening is we're getting a big turnover. So I've lived there for 28 years. When I moved there, the neighborhood had a lot of little kids that were attending the schools. And then as those kids grew up, our school enrollment declined. Now what's happening is those empty nesters like me are moving out of the neighborhood. Families with children are moving back in. And so now school enrollment is going back up. I would assume that's happening here. It does become very cyclical. Is your economic structure changing here? A lot of times it's yes. Limited funding impacting what's happening in your schools? Yes, for sure. And so is there competition for your school? Which I would say here in Monmouth County, it doesn't matter what school district that you're in, if you have a high school, there is definitely competition for your high schoolers to go to the academies that we have here in Monmouth County. So what can we do to keep those kids here in our school? So, you know, the board has said, yes, we have these things happening. So we really are going to move forward with the renewal of this strategic plan. Now, you did your strategic plan, the initial in 2016. I was floored when I got a call from Dr. Micah, who said to me, Kathy, it is now 2020, and I know we had a 5-year strategic plan, but we completed it in 4. So, in 2020, I came and we started strategic planning. We actually even had this meeting And not too long after I was here, everything came to a screeching halt because of the pandemic. So we just kind of let things ride to see what happens. And I think, John, we're going to be good to go. So here's our components of strategic planning. And I do think that it's important to talk about the commitment of the board, because your board was committed to the last strategic plan to ensure that it got carried forward. Dr. Micah gave updates on that strategic plan. Comprehensive updates have been given on the strategic plan, and you can actually see it on your website. So it really does, John, if you go back, the information is what we're going to talk about tonight. Within that information, the reports, you're going to talk about strengths and challenges that you as a committee see within those areas. And then when we come to the planning weekend, we will talk about what the group sees as strengths and challenges facing the district. We will then do a visioning exercise to start out with where is the district now, and then where do we want it to be 5 years from now. From there, we'll come up with goal areas, very large, broad goal areas, and then we will come up with strategies. And by the end of the planning weekend, we will have goal areas, we'll have proposed goal statements, we may have some objectives, and we will have strategies. That's where our planning weekend will end, and then action teams will be convened to take our weekend work and create those action plans. Then once that all gets done, I put together a final report. It gets delivered to the board. The board adopts the strategic plan, and then Dr. Micah and the administrative team begins implementing the strategic plan. And there will be pieces of the strategic plan that will then trickle down into the classrooms. And that's where all of this ends up impacting student achievement in your district. So the accountability piece is annually, Dr. Micah will give a state of the strategic plan report. And in that report, what he's going to do is say, here's what we worked on in year one. Here's what we accomplished. This is still in progress. However, there may be some things within the strategic plan that we're not going to be able to move forward with. And if he says we're not going to be able to move forward with it, he's going to let you know what. Is it funding? Is it space? What's the reason why we can't move forward with this particular objective and or actions? A lot of the times I've seen anymore where the meeting agendas that the board has at their meetings will then start taking action items that pertain to the strategic plan. And it will be notated that this particular action item refers back to strategic planning goal 1, objective 3, so that the board and the community know that this particular item that the board is moving forward with, it comes directly from your strategic plan. And then to give updates at board meetings and to have the strategic plan and the action items posted on the website so that community members can access it and see what's been accomplished, what's not been accomplished. So we get to tonight, and I brought with me this document. This document has a lot of additional information items that we'll talk about, but it is really the creation of the State of the Schools and the State of the Community report, because that's part of where we are now. So we want to have information to share with our weekend participants that will give us information on the state of the school at this point in time, as well as the communities that send their children to school here. So what was on the back of the table, and I will leave this one, are the two State of the Schools and State of the Community reports that were completed back in 2016. So that you can see, number one, what the final report looks like, but what kind of information was gathered during that initial strategic plan. I will tell you as an aside, both of these reports were done very, very well, and they have traveled throughout Monmouth County with me as I've been working with other districts as a good example of what a State of the School and State of the Community report should contain.
And the nice thing too is that, as Kathy said, we started this process in 2020. And when we started this process in 2020, we convened the State of the Schools and the State of the Community committees. And a lot of that work, because right up until our March planning weekend was going to be in March 2020. So at that point, we have, and what you have there is the final plan from 2016. But in March 2020, we were just about to finalize and present the State of the Community and State of the Schools report that were drafted in March 2020, right before everything came to a halt. So the nice thing is we have a lot of updates since 2016 that are now captured in updated reports for State of the School and State of the Community as of approximately January 2020.
Right, so you'll be able to take that information and just update it and see if there is anything new that needs to be included into those reports. So a lot of the work has already been kind of started, so that the two committees are going to review that work from 2020, see what needs to be updated and or added to the reports, and then get those final reports together and get them to John so that we're able to get them out to the groups, the group of people who are going to participate in our weekend planning session. And one of the things that I talked about before was we talk about the strengths and challenges. When you look at either the draft reports from 2020 or the final reports from 2016, you will see that within each section there are strengths and opportunities identified in those reports. And a lot of those strengths and opportunities are going to resurface and we will address whenever we get into the actual planning weekend. So you'll see that the State of the School, and if you look in the little handout that I gave you, covers really a whole host of things. And all of the information from the State of the Schools is going to be found here in the school district. Different departments. So that information is more an internal report, where the State of the Community is external. But you're really going to look at the educational program, human resources, facilities, technology, budget and finance, which will be a big thing, as well as school and community relations. And so if you look at the sheets here, the difference is each page here kind of drills things down. But the reality is you already have access to that information from the report from 2016 or the draft report from 2020. And then that state of the community will be a little from externally, because you have two communities that you're going to be gathering the information from. So, that one will have a little bit more legwork and investigation to be able to get that information that you need. The next slide, I think John really talked about state of the community. State of the community is going to bring into play demographics, and I would assume the district has done an updated demographics report, which helped to drive the whole issue with your new office building, expanding the preschool. That demographics information will most likely be contained in both reports. More so, more detailed information will end up in the community report, but I think what could happen is that demographic study can become an appendix to the state of the schools report, because that demographics is going to have a big impact on what happens educationally here in your district. And you have a lot of community factors, groups that are in both communities that were listed in here. And as I said, that's more of an external report. And then we get to the planning conference. This is really our planning meeting. It will be a Friday evening and a Saturday. Don't let Saturday scare you, because I usually put till 3 o'clock, but I've never gone beyond 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the afternoon. Find some wood to knock on somewhere, everybody. Because I keep things moving, sometimes like a drill sergeant, keep on top of things for us to be able to move through as quickly as possible, because I don't want to tie up your entire day on Saturday. And so what we'll do at this session, and it won't be I don't think as long, for the other reason in that you already have a vision statement, you already have a mission statement, and you already have core beliefs. So it will be looking at those, making a determination, do we need to make any changes to it? And most times the answer is no, and then it will be to reaffirm those 3 pieces and then move on to the actual visioning exercise, strengths and challenges. So as far as the planning dates, I saw you had those up there somewhere. So our planning weekend is January 21st and 22nd. We usually start Friday night off with dinner, and then the chair people of the state of the schools and state of the community will give a brief overview of the reports, just to kick things off, and then we'll go into some of the activities that we will be doing. And I think the final slide there is the action plans, but we have so those groups will be convened to create action plans. They'll also be made more up of community members and staff members. The last time we had 5 goals, so there will be 5 teams created to take the information and create those. We had 4 goals the last time. And equity and diversity was kind of woven through all of 4 goals. And then, just for a point of reference, the calendar, just so you know, moving forward. Here we are. So we're going to do the planning session January 21st and 22nd, which means that these two reports are going to need to go out to our participants for the weekend session by January 15th. And so it would most likely benefit John to get those around January 12th so that he can look at them in their final draft form to make sure everything looks uniform.
So that gives about 2 months from tonight, approximately 2 months, to update the state of the school and state of the community reports. And then that will give us 1 week to then share that out with the committee. We'll be part of that planning weekend so they can review those reports ahead of the planning weekend, with the understanding they're going to have a brief overview by the committee chairs at the kickoff on that Friday night.
And then you'll see, I always put snow dates in, because if I don't, it snows. So if we end up with snow on the 22nd, 21st and 22nd, that date will be moved to the 28th and 29th. I'm really hoping there's no snow because I'm doing a plan, I think the week before you all, which has a snow date the week before your snow date, so it's just going to make things a mess. So we don't want any snow. And then I'll come back on February 16th and train the action team leaders. And then you'll have February, March, into the beginning of April to create the action plans. Then on April 13th, we're going to bring everybody back. And the action teams are going to go through the action plans. Just so that all of the participants will know, here's our work, here's what the action plans are. And then I get to, from April 13th to May 23rd, finish up my final report and then deliver it to the board. So that's pretty much where we are. And so I think John's going to talk to you a little bit about your committee groups, let everybody know which committee they're on, who your committee chairs are, and then how the committees are going to work.
So as you'll see in the sample, the State of the Schools Committee, the finalized areas looked at curricula and programs, professional development, family and community partnerships, specialized programming, student achievement, funding and finance.
What page is that on?
This is in the table of contents from the sample 2016. So if you take and you flip through the table of contents, you can see the key areas for each committee. As you look at the state of the community, it looked at different areas. So you can see there, as Kathy mentioned, a lot of outreach. What is our community profile right now for Aberdeen and Matawan and Cliffwood Beach? What are our community organizations? What are the houses of worship that are in each of Matawan and Aberdeen? There was a section on Matawan, Aberdeen, and Keyport business listings as a surrounding area. What are the youth sports leagues, parks and recreation, projected development, and since 2020 there has been a lot more development, even that you'll see in these reports. So that is going to be a key area for the state of the community. Projected enrollment by grade level, and then the summary of any community survey results. And so those are the key areas of the state of the community, while the state of the schools report will look at, once again, curriculum and programs, professional development, personnel, funding, finance, school climate, and technology as the key areas for the state of the schools committee. The nice thing is we have done, as part of the grants that we received, we did a number of surveys recently. We did put out an American Rescue Plan survey that looked at what are the needs within our district. So we asked community members to identify in terms of, and rate priorities in terms of tutorial programs, after school services, clubs and activities, community partnerships, so we can use that information as a springboard to identify priorities. And then if there's other specific questions, the committees can develop Google surveys that can then be shared out. So a lot of that information we have in district already. And any information that we then need to do outreach for, that can be done as part of each.
I always say, don't forget people like me that had kids that went through the school system. They are gone. I still live here in the community, and I have a vested interest in what happens in the school. Because oftentimes what happens is once children graduate from high school, people like me don't get communicated with. And when it comes time for the board, if they decide they're going to have to pass a referendum, you want people like me to be coming out and voting yes if you're going out. And if you're not reaching out to me, I could be sitting there saying, well, why should I go vote yes? Because nobody from the district has communicated with me in any way, shape, or form. So you need to find a way to engage all of your stakeholders.
So the last community we had, Mrs. Tovia and Dr. Rawls co-chaired our State of the Schools Committee, and they will be chairing the State of the Schools Committee, which will update the State of the Schools plan. And then myself, Mr. Liebman, and Mrs. Perez will be chairing the State of the Community Committee, and that will be basically the point people for each of those two committees. So there is more people involved than could attend tonight. We had a number of people that reach out, but they are unavailable tonight. The nice thing is, and the key, I think the best way that it worked last time is that each person on the committee had a certain section that they were responsible for. And the committee chairs outlined what are the different sections that we need information to be updated on. That person is responsible for either creating a survey, community outreach to compile the listing of sports and recreation leagues within the community, teachers on the committee, so we have a nice representation of teachers. We also are very happy to have our student representative on our State of the Schools Committee. So the more student involvement we have, the more that we're going to have that voice, and that's a key voice. So I really appreciate you being here tonight and taking an active involvement. And I know you have peers as well that want to be involved in this process. So although this is just a small representation tonight, our goal is to have as many stakeholders involved in the process as